Hello friends, so in this chapter we are going to learn about the different from all the anatomy about from esophagus to the rectum and anus. Okay, or anatomy of the whole digestive system. So first we will see about esophagus. Okay, esophagus is present in the thoracic region and in the abdominal region. Now we are just dealing with the esophagus in the abdominal region. Okay, not the thoracic region. So if you see abdominal part of esophagus, it has only 1.25 centimeters long, and it enters the abdomen through esophageal opening in the diaphragm. So it enters from esophageal opening in the diaphragm. So this esophageal opening which we are talking about, so this esophageal opening in the diaphragm. So we will learn a few points about this esophageal opening, right? So in this esophageal opening, this is situated at level of T10 level of vertebra, and it is slightly to the left of the medial plane. It is located at T12 level left of median plane. Okay, whereas this cardiac end of the stomach, this is cardiac end of the stomach, that is the point where the esophagus opens into the stomach. Okay, this cardiac end of the stomach is situated at T11 and it is 2.5 centimeters to left of median plane. To left of median plane, it is 2.5 centimeters to left of median plane. So if you see, it is similar, it is clear that the esophageal opening is at T9, T10 and cardiac end of stomach is at T11. So abdominal part of esophagus extends from T10 to T11 only. Right? Now, its right border is continuous with the cardiac end of its right border is continuous with the lesser curvature of the stomach, whereas the left border is separated from the fundus of the stomach by cardiac notch. So that is not important. What is important here are the relations. So what are the relations of this esophagus? So if you see the relations of this esophagus anteriorly, and left, it is covered by peritoneum. So only in the anteriorly and left it is covered by peritoneum. Okay, then if we see the true relations, peritoneum, so if you see the true relations, we have anterior relations of the, we have anteriorly, we have, it is related to anteriorly, the esophagus is related to anterior vagal trunk and left lobe of liver. It is related to anterior vagal trunk and left lobe of liver. Whereas if you see posteriorly, the liver is posteriorly related to posterior vagal trunk. Posteriorly, the esophagus is posteriorly related to posterior vagal trunk and diaphragm. Okay, posteriorly it is related to posterior vagal trunk and diaphragm. And along the left side, if you see left side, there will be esophageal branches of left gastric arteries. On the left side, you will see esophageal branches of left gastric artery and vein. Okay, so these are the relations of esophagus. So esophagus, if we see, it is an abdominal part of esophagus is 1.25 centimeters in length. It extends from T10 to T11. It has two openings. One, it has esophageal opening which is present at T10 left to the midline, whereas cardiac end it ends at cardiac end of the stomach at T11, which is 2.5 centimeters left of the midline. Relations are anteriorly and the left it is covered by the peritoneum. Anteriorly it is related to anterior vagal trunk and left lobe of liver. Posteriorly it is related to posterior vagal trunk and diaphragm. On the left side there are branches, esophageal branches of left gastric artery and vein. Now let us learn about the stomach. Stomach, if you see, stomach in Greek it is called as gaster in Greek and venter in Latin. Okay, if you see stomach, it is the widest and the most distensible part of the alimentary canal. One of the one-liner which can be given are stomach is most distensible part of alimentary canal. The whole alimentary canal, if you see, stomach is the most distensible part of alimentary canal. Okay, so this stomach forms the muscular bag to store food. So what are the functions of stomach? The functions of stomach, mainly it forms three functions. One, it is a muscular bag, okay, and it stores food. It is used for storage of food. Then it also mixes the food with gastric secretions. It mixes the food with gastric secretions, and once it mixes the food with gastric secretions, it forms a semi-fluid material which is called as chyme in the stomach. Then it controls the rate of delivery of chyme to the small intestine. Controls rate of delivery of chyme to small intestine, so that the food stays in the stomach for a longer time, thus helping in digestion of the food. Okay, now we will see the location. The stomach is situated in the left hypochondriac region, epigastric. See, it is situated in the left hypochondriac region, epigastric region and umbilical region. It extends obliquely from left hypochondriac region into the epigastric and umbilical region. Most of the stomach is under the cover of left costal margin and the ribs. If you see the shape of the stomach, if you see, there are 4 different shapes of the stomach, but among this the most commonly it is J shaped. Okay, and its long axis will pass downwards, forwards and to the right, and finally backwards and slightly upwards. Okay, its long axis. What is the long axis of the stomach? If this is asked, long axis of the stomach is, it first passes downwards, then forwards and to the right, and then finally it goes backwards. See, here it is going backwards and slightly upwards. So first it goes downwards, forwards and to the right, and then it goes backwards and slightly upwards. So this is the long axis of the stomach. Okay, so it starts from the fundus, which is wider part, and it tapers to the narrow pylorus. Okay, next, these are the other shapes that includes there is reverse L shaped. This is reverse L shaped, semi-lunar shaped and steer horn shaped, but the most common shape is J shaped stomach. Then if you see, the length of the stomach is 10 centimeters. Then at birth the stomach has a capacity of 30 ml. At puberty the stomach has capacity of 1000 ml, and in adults it has a capacity of 1500 to 2000 ml. Both the shape and position of the stomach vary greatly according to the build of the individual. According to the build of the individual, the shape will vary greatly. So if you see in the shapes, it is high or transverse, that is steer horn shaped, is seen in short and obese individuals. This teeth horn shape of stomach is seen in short and obese individuals. This is called as high and transverse. High and transverse type is seen in short and obese individuals, and sometimes long and elongated part of the stomach, or you can tell this as around J shaped. It is seen in tall and weak persons. In tall and weak persons you see long and elongated type of stomach. Okay, then even in some individuals the shape of the stomach will also depend upon some other features. This shape is also, it also depends on volume of fluid, volume of food he takes will also determine the shape of the stomach. Then position of the body, it also depends upon the position of body, that is in erect and in sleeping position or supine position it varies. Then it also differs with the phase of respiration in some. So shape will also depend upon these things: one, volume of food; second, position of body; and third, phase of the respiration. Okay, for studying the shape of the stomach we can use barium meal, and in the barium meal these 4 types of stomach have been found out. Okay, then next, if you see the external features of the stomach. So in the external features of the stomach mainly has some important things. Let me explain you. Yep. Okay, here if you see, the stomach has 2 ends. It has 2 ends which are the cardiac end and it has pyloric end. It has 2 ends. It has 2 curvatures, that is greater curvature and lesser curvature. It has 2 surfaces, which is anterior surface and posterior surface, also called as anterior superior surface and posterior inferior surface. So first, coming to cardiac end. In the cardiac end, it is also called as cardiac orifice or the upper end. It joins the lower part of esophagus and presents the cardiac orifice. Then in the pyloric end, it joins the proximal part of the duodenum and presents an orifice called the pyloric end. This pyloric end is around 1.5 centimeters right to the median plane at L1. Pyloric end is present at L1, 1.5 centimeters right to the median plane. Okay, then coming to the curvatures of the stomach, we have lesser curvature of the stomach and greater curvature of the stomach. Lesser curvature is concave and forms the short right border of the stomach, and it is the most dependent part of this this curvature is angular notch. Angular notch is actually the most dependent. Angular notch is the most dependent part of this is the most dependent part of lesser curvature. It indicates the junction of pylorus and body also. Okay, then this lesser curvature will provide attachment to lesser curvature provides attachment to lesser omentum. Then we have greater curvature. This greater curvature forms the long left border of the stomach. So this is left, this is right. Right, it forms the long left border of the stomach, and in the upper end it has a cardiac notch, which you can see here. This is the cardiac notch. I'll just write it again here. This is cardiac notch. Okay, this part is cardiac notch. Okay, greater curvature has a in its upper part, it represents a notch called as cardiac notch. This cardiac notch separates the greater curvature from the left aspect of the esophagus. this cardiac notch separates this cardiac notch will separate greater curvature from esophagus. Right, so this cardiac notch will separate the greater curvature from esophagus, and this cardiac notch provides attachment to greater omentum. So this is the greater omentum, this is cardiosplenic ligaments and cardiophrenic ligaments. So the greater curvature provides attachment to greater omentum, cardiosplenic and cardiophrenic ligaments. Then if you see the surfaces, as I have said, there are two surfaces which are antero superior surface and posterior inferior surface. Antero superior surface is forward, up and upwards. Antero superior surface is found forward and upwards, whereas posterior inferior surface faces backwards and downwards. It faces backwards and downwards. Okay, then okay, then we will have to know the differences between cardiac orifice and pyloric orifice. Okay, so first we will write the differences between the cardiac orifice and the pyloric orifice. So cardiac orifice is the junction between the esophagus and the stomach, and it marks the beginning at which the curvatures begin, whereas pyloric orifice is obviously it is between pyloric end of the stomach and the first part of duodenum. That is not important. What is important here is, in cardiac orifice we have this situated at the left of median plane. It is situated at the left median plane behind the 7th costal cartilage. It is situated at the left median plane behind the 7th costal cartilage and 2.5 centimeters from the junction of from its junction with sternum. I'll just tell you this, what does this mean. At lower border of T11, it is situated at lower border of T11. So that is cardiac orifice. So if you see, okay, I'm just drawing this as arbitrary sternum. Okay, so this is present 2.5 centimeters from the sternum. Okay, it is present 2.5 centimeters from the sternum. There is costal cartilage. Okay, 2.5 centimeters, there is costal cartilage. So this costal cartilage is of that of 7th costal cartilage, 7th rib. There is 7th rib costal cartilage 2.5 centimeters from the mid-sternal line, or from the point of, not even mid-sternal line, from the point of its attachment to the sternum. Okay, at this, behind this we have 7th costal cartilage, and this will correspond to, if you see, this will correspond to T11 lower border. Okay, so this is about the cardiac orifice. Then if you see the pyloric orifice, this pyloric orifice is mainly situated at about 1.5 centimeters to the right of median plane. It is situated, oh sorry, it should be left. I'm sorry. Orientation is the is mistake. Just a minute. So I'm putting it here. Okay. So cardiac orifice. So this is the place where you have the sternum. Okay, I'll actually draw again properly. So this is the place where I am actually putting the sternum. Okay, so from this sternum at the junction of sternum and 7th rib, from there to 2.5 centimeters behind the costal cartilage, you will see this cardiac orifice. Okay, and this will actually correspond to T11 vertebrae. The same thing, but the thing is it is in the left side. Okay, now in the pyloric orifice, if you see, it is 1.5 centimeters right of the median plane at lower border of L1. It is present at the lower border of L1. So if you take this into consideration, if this here you have the L1 vertebrae, okay, so at the L1 vertebrae, okay, this is the median line. Okay, then it is 1.5 centimeters right to the median line. You can see this pyloric end. Okay, let me draw this again properly. See, this is the sternum. Yep. So you have around 1.5 centimeters laterally, you have this pyloric end. This is the pyloric end. Okay, so this will correspond to the level of L1. Okay, right? So this is the pyloric end and cardiac orifice. Then we have one more differences. If you see this cardiac orifice, it is an anatomical sphincter. It is not an anatomical sphincter, sorry. This pyloric, cardiac orifice does not have an anatomical sphincter, and it is mainly guarded by a physiological sphincter. It has a physiological sphincter. But if you see the pyloric orifice, it has anatomical sphincter. Okay, that is formed by the pyloric muscle, circular coat of muscles. Okay, so this is about cardiac orifice and pyloric orifice. Then after that we have to learn about the parts of the stomach. So in this stomach, I will just explain you the parts of the stomach, and I'll explain the important and write the important points. Okay, so in this, if you see, the parts of the stomach are mainly, we have 4 parts. One, we have the fundus of the stomach, and we have this cardiac part also, that is cardiac part of the stomach. Then we have body of stomach, and we have pyloric part of stomach. So we have cardiac part, fundus, body of the stomach, and pyloric part of stomach. Cardiac part of the stomach is the part which is present around the cardiac orifice. Then fundus part of the stomach, it is the upper dome shaped part of the stomach. It is dome shaped, and it is situated at the level of horizontal plane drawn at the level of cardiac notch. So it is situated above the horizontal plane drawn at the level of cardiac notch. Superiorly, the fundus usually reaches the level of 5th costal cartilage. So it is present up to 5th costal cartilage, that is just below the nipple. Why? Nipple is present at T4. So it is present in the 5th costal space, intercostal space, not costal cartilage, sorry. This fundus is present up to 5th intercostal space, just below the nipple. So that is the reason why sometimes the pain in the stomach can be mistaken to be due to angina pectoris. Then we have cardiac notch. Cardiac notch will lie between the fundus and the esophagus. Okay, this fundus is generally distended with gas and air, which is clearly seen as translucent shadow under the left dome of the diaphragm. We have its space which is associated with this stomach, which is called as Trueb space. I'll explain you in a minute about it. Then we have the body of the stomach. So in the body of the stomach, this is the major part of the stomach present between the fundus and the pyloric end. It can be distended along the greater curvature. This body can be distended along the greater curvature. Okay, next we have pyloric part. So this pyloric part is a funnel shaped. Pyloric part is which shaped? It is funnel. It is like a funnel. Okay, it is funnel shaped outflow region of the stomach. It is a line drawn downwards and to the left. So if you see, this pyloric part is a funnel shaped and it is present, it is an outflow region of the stomach. Then a line drawn downwards and to the left from an angular notch to the greater curvature separates it from the body. I'm sorry. A line which is drawn from the we will draw a line from this angular notch to the greater curvature, and this line will separate the body and the pylorus. Okay, this pylorus is divided into three parts. We have pylorus antrum, pylorus opening and pylorus canal. Okay, so let me just write it. So there are two lines which are important. One is a line drawn downwards and to the left from an angular notch to the greater curvature separates the pylorus from stomach. Okay, and there is one more which is important here, that is there is second line, that is the line above, a line from a line which is drawn from the actually it is a horizontal line, right? This is a horizontal line drawn at the level of cardiac orifice. This will separate the fundus and the body of the stomach. So these two lines are very important. See, we have two lines. One line which is drawn from the cardiac notch, and this is the line which is separating the fundus and the body. The second line which is drawn from the angle incisura angularis to the greater curvature, and this line separates the pylorus from the body of the stomach. Okay, these two lines are important. Next, if you see this pyloric antrum, it is divided into three parts. Pylorus is divided into three parts. One, we have pyloric antrum. Second, we have pyloric canal and sulcus intermedius. This pyloric antrum is the proximal wider part which is separated from the pyloric canal by sulcus intermedius on the greater curvature. On the greater curvature, this sulcus intermedius will separate the pyloric antrum from the pylorus. So this sulcus intermedius will separate pyloric antrum from pyloric canal. This is sulcus intermedius. There is one mistake in this labeling. So this is, which you are talking about, this is nothing but pyloric antrum. Okay, this pyloric part, here you have the pyloric canal. So this is pyloric canal. Okay, so this sulcus terminalis intermedius, sulcus intermedius will separate the pyloric canal and pyloric antrum. And this pyloric antrum, so we will see few sentences about pyloric antrum. This is the proximal wide, I'm sorry, it's just a little confusion, sorry. So this is pyloric canal, this pyloric part is the pyloric canal, and sorry, this is the pyloric antrum. Okay, and this part is the pyloric canal. So let me be clear again. So I'll draw this part again here. Okay, so we have, this is the, just think that this is the whole pylorus. Okay, this pylorus has a line. Okay, it is a division which is called as sulcus terminalis, sorry, sulcus intermedius. So this is a division which is called as sulcus intermedius. Okay, so now this is the stomach. Okay, this is the duodenum, right? So here, then prior to the sulcus intermedius, that is the proximal and wider part, this is pyloric antrum. This pyloric antrum is actually a proximal part and it is wider part. Okay, it is separated from this part, which is, sorry, it is separated from this one, which is pyloric canal, with a line which is called as sulcus intermedius. Sulcus intermedius will separate the pyloric antrum and the pyloric canal. Okay, this pyloric canal is the distal narrow tubule. This is distal and this is narrow part. And tubular, it measures around 2.5 centimeters. Okay, whereas this pyloric antrum will measure around 7.5 centimeters. Okay, so this is the differences between pyloric antrum and pylorus. Pyloric antrum, then we have pyloric canal, and this pyloric canal will have the distalmost part of this pyloric canal. This part is called as, we have pylorus. We have something called as pylorus. I'll write it here. This part is the pylorus. So this pylorus is actually a distalmost part, and it has the sphincter, and it forms the anatomical sphincter. Okay, in the anatomical sphincter, this is mainly formed by the thickening of circular muscles. Here the circular muscles are thickened and it forms this anatomical sphincter. Okay, then if you see the position of pyloric orifice is indicated by two things. So now there is one more important thing which is important here, that is I'll write in the text box. Right, there is one more thing which is important, is about the position of the pyloric orifice. The position of the pyloric orifice is mainly indicated by two things. One, it is indicated by the circular sulcus which is present. This circular sulcus is the pyloric constriction which is produced by the underlying pyloric sphincter or pylorus. So there is pyloric constriction which is produced by this pyloric sphincter and pylorus. that is circular sulcus. This will mark the position of pyloric orifice. One more thing which marks the position of the pyloric orifice is pre-pyloric vein of Mayo. So this pre-pyloric vein of Mayo is present on the anterior surface of pylorus. Okay, this will also mark the position of the pyloric orifice. So the position of the pyloric orifice is mainly indicated by these two things. Okay, so this is important. Next, in this picture here we have this pre-pyloric vein of Mayo. This pre-pyloric vein of Mayo on the anterior surface of the pylorus also marks the position of the pyloric orifice. Right? Now let us see the relations. So if you see the relations of the pyloric of the the relations of the stomach, as I have already showed you in the prior picture, I'll just show you the picture. Okay, in this picture if you see, the stomach is covered by peritoneum everywhere except along the blood vessels running along its curvature. Okay, there is peritoneum present everywhere except it is not present in two regions. What are they? Okay, this peritoneum is absent mainly posteriorly. The peritoneum is absent posteriorly near the cardiac orifice. This is absent posteriorly near the cardiac orifice, and this is called as bare area of stomach. We call this site as bare area of stomach. Okay, here the peritoneal folds extending from the lesser curvature and greater curvature are present. So we have mainly from the lesser curvature we have lesser omentum, which is extending from the lesser curvature to the liver. Okay, there is lesser omentum which is extending from the lesser curvature to the liver, which contains two parts, hepatogastric part and hepatoduodenal part. Then we have greater omentum. This greater omentum extends from the lower two-third. It extends mainly from lower two-third of greater curvature. It extends from lower two-third of greater curvature to transverse colon. It is extending from lower two-third of greater curvature to transverse colon, that is greater omentum. Then we have gastrosplenic and gastrophrenic ligament. The gastrosplenic ligament is extending from upper one-third of the greater curvature to the spleen, whereas gastrophrenic extends from the, this is gastrophrenic which extends from the uppermost part. See, I have labeled it wrong again. See, we have, this is gastrosplenic, which is from lower, sorry, it's not lower, right, it is upper, which extends from upper one-third of greater curvature to spleen. It extends from upper one-third of greater curvature to spleen. We have this gastrosplenic ligament. Above this gastrosplenic ligament we have gastrophrenic ligament, which is extending from uppermost part of the fundus to the diaphragm. So these are the peritoneal relations of the stomach. Then we have the visceral relations of the stomach. So in the visceral relations of the stomach we have relations of the anterior surface of the stomach and the relations of posterior surface of the stomach. So if you see the relations of posterior surface of the stomach, see anterior. Okay, first we will see the relations of anterior surface of the stomach. The anterior surface of the stomach, on the right side there is gastric impression on the left lobe of the stomach, gastric impression on the left lobe of liver near the pylorus, and near the pylorus to the right lobe of the liver. Actually, on the right side, this surface is related to the gastric impression of the left lobe of the liver near the pylorus, and near the pylorus to the quadrate lobe of the liver, whereas in the left half of this surface is related to the diaphragm and the rib cage. Left side it is related to diaphragm and the rib cage. On the right side it is related to the left lobe of liver and also the quadrate lobe of the liver. It is related to the left lobe of the liver and quadrate lobe of the liver. Okay, so this is anterior surface. Then if you see visceral surface or the posterior surface, in the posterior surface or posterior inferior surface, it is related to the diaphragm. Okay, posterior surface it is related to the diaphragm. Then it is related to left suprarenal gland, left kidney, spleen, pancreas, transverse mesocolon and splenic artery and spleen. So it is related to diaphragm, left kidney, left suprarenal gland, pancreas, transverse mesocolon, left colic flexure also, that is splenic flexure of colon, and spleen artery and spleen, splenic artery and spleen. Okay, so these are the relations of posterior surface of the stomach. Then if you see the interior of the stomach is made up of gastric, first we have many gastric folds and are also called as gastric rugae. These gastric folds are also called as gastric rugae. What are these gastric rugae? These are the mucosa of an empty stomach. Here the mucosa of an empty stomach is thrown into numerous folds called the gastric rugae. They are longitudinal along the lesser curvature, whereas they are irregular in the remaining part. So if you see, there are two types. If you see in the lesser curvature, mainly in the lesser curvature, these are seen longitudinally. Okay, whereas in remaining places they are irregular. They are seen irregular in remaining places. Then we have one more thing which is important here is about the gastric pits. We have numerous gastric pits. What are these gastric pits? These are the small depressions which are present on the mucosal surface. These are the small depressions which are present on the mucosal surface. These are the gastric pits. Okay, these are actually the site of opening of glands. Okay, so this is gastric pits. Then we have something called as gastric canal or canal of Magenstrace. So here along with this, all these lymph nodes will drain into celiac nodes, and from there to intestinal lymphatic trunk, and from there to finally cisterna chyli. Then if you see, we have nerve supply of the stomach. So nerve supply of the stomach, okay fine. Okay, nerve supply of the stomach I will tell you here. So nerve supply of the stomach, it is divided into two types. One, we have sympathetic innervation is present. Okay, second we have parasympathetic innervation. First we will see sympathetic innervation. Sympathetic fibers are derived from T6 to T7. Sorry, T6 to T10. The sympathetic fibers are derived from T6 to T10 spinal segments via greater splanchnic nerves. Via the greater splanchnic nerves, the sympathetic fibers are derived from T6 to T9 via greater splanchnic nerves, and celiac and hepatic plexus also via the greater splanchnic nerves. Celiac and hepatic plexus, these are derived from T6 to T9. Then these sympathetic supply to these provide sympathetic supply to the stomach. they supply the vasomotor fibers, vasomotor supply, they supply motor to pyloric sphincter, and they serve as chief pathway for, and they will also send pain sensations from stomach. Okay, so these are the things which you see in sympathetic innervation. Now along with sympathetic innervation, we have one more innervation which is called as parasympathetic innervation, right? We have sympathetic innervation, we have parasympathetic innervation also. This parasympathetic innervation fibers are directly derived from the mainly vagus nerve. This is mainly derived from vagus nerve. So if you see, this is the parasympathetic innervation diagram which is important. So we have two vagus trunks, which is anterior vagal trunk and posterior vagal trunk. So this is the anterior vagal trunk which we are seeing here. So here we have this part which is anterior vagal trunk. See, this anterior vagal trunk, it is actually a derivative from left vagus nerve. So left vagus nerve gives rise to this anterior vagal trunk, largely from the left vagus nerve and partly from right vagus nerve. It mainly gets branches from left vagus nerve largely and partly from right vagus nerve, right? Soon after entering the abdomen, it gives off three branches. One which is this branch, which is hepatic branch. It gives off this branch which is hepatic branch. This hepatic branch will run along the upper curvature, upper part of lesser omentum to the porta hepatis to give branches to the liver and the gallbladder. So as the name says, so if you see, we will see the branches also. So branches, first it gives hepatic branch, which you can see in the figure. So hepatic branch mainly supplies the liver and gallbladder through porta hepatis. It goes to the porta hepatis and supplies the liver and the gallbladder. Then second branch, which is called as celiac branch, obviously as the name says, it goes along the celiac curvature and it supplies the celiac ganglion. This celiac branch actually it goes along the left gastric artery to the celiac plexus. So from it goes to the left gastric artery to the celiac plexus. Then we also have gastric branch or nerve of Letharget. Among all these types, it is the largest branch of all the three types, and this will follow the lesser curvature and distributes the anterior gastric branches and gives anterior gastric branches to the stomach. So the third branch is a nerve of Letharget, which is the largest branch, and it gives anterior branches to the stomach. See, this is the nerve of Letharget, which is the largest branch and giving branches to the stomach. So this is the anterior, this is the important points about anterior vagal trunk. Okay, then we also have something called as posterior vagal trunk. Okay, so this is the picture of posterior vagal trunk. Even this also gives similar branches. See, this posterior vagal trunk is actually, if you see, this is derived largely from the right vagus nerve mainly, and even partly it is derived from the left vagus nerve. From the right vagus nerve, it is mainly derived, and it also gets derived partly from the left vagus nerve. And if you see the branches of this, we have first celiac branch which is given to the celiac ganglion. Second branches we have nerve of Grassi. What is this nerve of Grassi? So here you can see this new branch which is seen, which is nerve of Grassi here, which is not present in the anterior vagal trunk. So this nerve of Grassi is one or more branches can be given the name nerve of Grassi, and it arises from the gastroesophageal junction. It arises at the gastroesophageal junction, and it will supply the gastric fundus, So that is posterior vagal trunk in that nerve of Grassi. Then the last branch, obviously we have the same branch which is present, which is gastric branch of Letharget. The final branch is gastric branch of Letharget, which is similar supplies. It runs along the lesser curvature and gives branches to the posterior surface of the stomach. Obviously, anterior part, it gives branches to the anterior surface of the stomach, whereas posterior vagal trunk branch, that is gastric branch of Letharget, gives branches to the posterior surface of the stomach. So we have celiac branch, nerve of Grassi, gastric branch of Letharget. We have that is from posterior vagal trunk. In anterior vagal trunk we have hepatic branch, celiac branch, and nerve of Letharget. Anterior, see, this is very important. See, anterior vagal trunk is derived from left vagus, whereas posterior vagal trunk is derived from right vagus. See, you can remember it like this: PQR. P, after P we get Q and R, whereas left and anterior, you can remember like this: P and R are nearer to each other, so these both will combine to one. So posterior vagal trunk mainly derived from right vagus, but it also has small branches from left vagus also. So this is about the stomach. Thank you guys for watching my lecture. In the next class we will learn about spleen. Thank you.